Hello, and welcome to the Irish Gaze podcast. Bestie,
Dave, Ed,
how are we?
doing well, lad. How you getting on?
Aye, all good, lad, all good. We've just finished recording a little podcast there, a little bit of Harry Potter.
We did Harry Potter there, yeah.
It was good.
We're a man down again.
We're a man down. We lost Tom.
Tom was lost, yes, sometime this afternoon.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Car issues,
Car issues. So,
communication issues.
communication issues. So yeah,
But,
we're a man down.
Yeah, so we have our usual topics. We have nerd culture. We have our American sports, which is kind of more international sports. It's kind of covered a lot.
It is.
And football usually. So that's usually our three. But of recent, we have decided putting out wee podcasts, shorter form podcasts on just wee sort of side ideas that we have had. I know I've done a few on sort of combat sports. I suppose it's sort of linked into our American sports / international sports.
Mm-hmm.
These boys have been kind enough to sit down and let me rant about boxing and UFC and stuff for a couple of times.
Yes.
Big Dev's led the way with his Big Dev's Big Quiz.
Big Dev's Big Quiz.
We definitely will be getting into that. We'll probably transition it until Dev's done 3 football ones so far. I think a couple of them are out, but I think we'll maybe transition it into maybe like a wee movie quiz maybe some night, or maybe a wee NFL quiz, NBA quiz.
Mm-hmm.
But tonight, this has been sort of your idea so far. So this is
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll
let you go, Vest.
Well, a few of us in particular, me, you, I know Tom's doing a bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're reading a bit at the moment. Particularly you're going on a crazy turn with The Wheel of Time, which is a serious commitment.
It's getting there, lad.
You're nearly there, lad.
I've got I finished book 11, and I'm taking like a wee break, and then I'm gonna go and finish the last 3.
It's like a 14-book series, isn't it? So like it's a big commitment you've undertaken, and
Starting the Brandon Sanderson versions, lad. That's
yes.
where Sanderson takes over. So.
That's where he comes
Aye,
in.
that's where he comes in.
Tom's, I think, 5 books in. I've managed to get into the second one, although I sort of stopped it. I'm going to restart again. So
With our podcast research, our podcast doing and stuff, it's hard enough to get time when you
it's hard to commit sometimes, but
we're putting a lot of time into this, people. So listen.
Yes. Exactly.
So this has been your thought.
Yes. So we've decided we're going to do. We read a few books. I listen to a lot of books on Audible.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just kind of what you said, like it's hard to get the time in sometimes to commit to reading. There's a lot of stuff going on. I find I can get through books quicker whenever I'm on the go, if I'm driving to work, when I'm driving from work, if I'm sitting in the room listening to them on the headphones or taking a bit of chill time, I can get through them at a fairly good rate. Whereas, you know yourself, if you're reading the book, it takes me a bit more time to get that opportunity to get through them. So
I try and get like 2 chapters in a day. That's kind of where I'm at.
It's a steady rate, like.
Aye.
So the aim of this podcast is to basically bring forward a couple of books that we're reading, or one book per episode.
We'll do this every now and again. And I think obviously maybe with some of the bigger, maybe like the Wheel of Time and stuff, we'll probably do a longer, maybe a full podcast into our nerd topic culture stuff. But this is just going to be like a wee something what you're reading, what you've liked, and what you're up to right now. So we can update it every now and then, and what we've done.
Oh, I very much so. And
I like this, Festy. This is a good idea.
A shorter and sweeter podcast episode. I mean, like with 2 of us in tonight, I don't know if Dave is going to be committing much to this, but I think he's been
We've
trying.
just done a Harry Potter thing, and he said the last thing he read was Harry Potter.
And that's probably come back a few years. I know Tom's.
Well, he had listened to it in Audible or whatever recently, so
Tom is interested in it as well. So hopefully, in the next episode, we'll have him back on board with us.
Yeah.
But so basically, we're just going to go through what books we have read or reading at the moment. Just talk a wee bit why we like them, and I suppose, Dave, this leads us to going into what you have for us this week. So
you're going to set me up first, lad?
I'm going to set you up first. So, Dave, what book have you for us this week?
Hi. This isn't one that I'm currently reading. I read this book last year. We try not to. We're covering a wide range of things here. Like we're covering nerd culture. We're covering American sports and football and all that. And we're trying not to go outside the box too much in that. That's what we're trying to aim for. Like, but the book that I have is slightly political, and I know the politics isn't divisive enough, so it's something that we kind of want to steer away from probably a wee touch, because you could say one thing and then 2,000 people don't like you for one comment, even though they might agree with 95% of the rest of the stuff.
And the IGB podcast is done for.
That's it. We're done before we started, lad. But I thought basically I read 3 types of books, lad. So I read
Sports is a big one.
I read sports books. I then read like fantasy series and stuff. Fiction. Sort more geared towards fantasy series like Lord of the Rings and obviously the Wheel of Time that I'm tackling at the minute. But the third one, and I'm a bit the way that inclined. I'm a wee bit of a history nut too. Like I do like my history. Like
you do.
Same as Big Dave really. Although I don't know, he's not reading books. But I like a wee bit of history, and I sort of thought with everything that's sort of going on at the minute everywhere, the sort of Black Lives Matter stuff and all that. We're trying not to get too political, but this is a wee book that sort of I think is a good read for anybody. In the sort of times that we're in and stuff like that. We're obviously, as I said, we're not trying to get into this too much, but I think this is a wee bit poignant, this book. It's a great book. It's called Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of Empire. It's by Akala. Akala's I'll give you a wee brief description. It's got a wee bit about the author here. Akala's a rapper, basically, hip-hop artist, but one of the smartest people I've listened to.
So he's kind of, I know a lot of these musicians these days are quite well in depth with what's
going on,
politically or with political things like. Yeah. But he's definitely, this is a book in the political side of things. Then is it for him?
He made his mark in hip hop. Like I'll read a wee short thing here. I like my physical books best. You're an audible man, but because it's hard to get the time. I know it's hard to get the time to sit down and actually.
It is. I do enjoy it. It is quite nice sometimes to sit down and read a book. But yeah.
I'll just give it. There's a wee brief on the rear of the book here. He's a British hip hop star, so based in London. Akala is a BAFTA and MOBO award-winning hip hop artist, writer, and social entrepreneur, as well as the co-founder of the Hip Hop Shakespeare Company. He's toured the world, appeared at many festivals. He's been on the BBC. They bring him in for certain topics and things like that. There, he's of British, like Afro-Caribbean descent.
Oh yeah.
He's had addresses at Oxford and things of that nature. He's a really, really well-read historian. His intelligence is off the chain. Like I think he did his GCSEs a few years early. Like I mean, if you listen to any of his music, it's very well put together. He's got a message in what he's saying and stuff. He's one of the most intelligent people I've ever listened to, and I think obviously, with everything that's happening at the minute and all that there, it's good to gain perspective on the other side, basically, if you're, if you don't know too much about it. I always encourage people to learn stuff, so try and, read what you can, learn what you can, and try and learn other perspectives, and I think this book is fantastic for that. I mean, it's a short enough little book. It's about 300 odd pages, 320 odd pages. It's incredibly well referenced, that, as you can see there. He's got all sorts of historical links in there.
He's done his homework.
Absolutely, lad. He's one of the most intelligent people I've ever heard. Fantastic historian. Like,
I don't think I've ever actually heard of him as a music artist. Like, and I don't think.
See, that's the thing, is he wouldn't be very mainstream. Like, and a lot of his stuff is quite political, and that kind of, maybe sways people one way or another. But a fantastic, just historian. He's so well read and so articulate too. Like, I would advise anybody to listen to his Oxford Union address. It's about an hour and a half long. It's on YouTube, and he talks in sort of. He doesn't, sometimes people that are very intelligent, it's hard to wrap your head around it. Because he's sort of born in hip hop and stuff, and he's in that sort of culture. He doesn't be too philosophical or anything. He breaks things down to the sort of
ground level.
Fantastic stuff. Like, I mean, it's just always good to, the way this book's sort of structured is, it's kind of a biography of his life, but he links things that has happened through his life till, like, historical learning. So, he talks about the first time he ever seen somebody get stabbed, right? And he'll bring this stuff out into wider, sort of the culture clash and sort of oppression and things that happened, and race and all these sorts of things, like that happen within.
Sounds like he's like sort of like seen a lot in his life from saying what from what you're saying there. He's probably had maybe a rough upbringing, has he? He sort of lived in a wee bit.
Somewhat, lad. I mean, you ever heard of Miss Dynamite?
Miss Dynamite.
Miss Dynamite's his older sister.
Is it?
Miss Dynamite's his older
I
sister.
actually like a few songs by Miss Dynamite.
Miss Dynamite's his older sister.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's where he sort of got his his roots in the hip hop. Like, and he did have issues. He was born of a white Scottish mother and a black father.
Okay.
Born in London, his white sort of side of his family disowned him in a way. They were quite racist and stuff. But he brings it all into class and sort of how lower class politics and things are linked with upper class, and it's not so much to do with race, because he links it really well here. There's a bit I thought that's pretty poignant where the Irish Guys podcast, and there's a bit where he talks about the link between how in England the only white people, or not maybe the only, but the white people that he only felt any sort of similarity to were the Irish.
Really?
Because of the time that he was born in, a lot of the Irish were seen as terrorists, and obviously within Britain.
Yeah.
I'll read a little bit of a quote here. Closer to home, Allen also contrasts the management of racial dominance in British occupied Ireland with racial oppression in Anglo-America. There are many striking parallels between the way the Irish were treated and the way latter racialized groups would be. The idea that the Irish were essentially savages still lingered with us in Britain and England until the 1960s, with the infamous "No Irish, no blacks, no dogs" saying being just one example.
Mm-hmm.
He links that quite well, even to the transition of that's the only white people that he maybe
could feel
felt because they were sort of looked down upon as well. That he felt any sort of link to.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it is quite a political book, but it's good. It's good to learn things. It's good to get somebody else's perspective. In my eyes, I mean, he links everything. He talks about Colin Kaepernick, all this stuff.
It's all very relatable.
It's all very relatable to what's going on right now. Like, and I mean, as I said, we don't want to get too political on this stuff, but he talks about Jim Crow and things that have all happened in the United States, and basically everything that's going on right now. And the way he structures the book's brilliant. I mean, as I said, it is a sort of biography by him. I'm probably not doing this book justice, but it is like a biography of his life and certain things that happened within his life. And because he's quite intelligent, he links it all really well together and talks about there's a chapter about Linford Christie and winning gold and stuff, and how he felt quite good, a black man winning gold, but how there was still a level of oppression within, he was born in the 80s, like the first chapter is called Born in the 1980s, and we've sort of hinted on that maybe in a couple of the football podcasts about how there was still quite a lot of racism in England at that time, and how seeing Linford Christie being held up as like a an idol for somebody, but then how the media portrayed him and stuff, and it's a lot of that stuff. And I thought that just with everything that's going on at the minute, I thought that it's quite an interesting one. It's quite an interesting book, lad. Like I said, I do only really read sport history and fantasy stories. It's a Sunday Times bestseller. It was out last year. There's some good quotes here on the back. Akala is the kind of disruptive, aggressive intellect that a new generation is closely watching. It's won a pile of awards. There's a list of them in the back of the book here. It's absolutely fantastic. The Irish Times wrote a book bristling with intelligence and insight. I mean, like, I don't necessarily agree with everything that I've listened to Akala put forward. It's fine to disagree with people. It is. But I think it's always great to get somebody's perspective, because if you listen to other people's perspective, it can change your own.
It's good to get somebody else's sort of hands-on sort of thoughts put forward to you, like, so you can, as you say, look at it from their side. Was the book what you thought it would be? Were you expecting it to be like that, or was it just something that had stood out to you where you might think?
I'd seen a wee bit of Akala previous, lad. Bits and pieces. Like I said, I think I'd seen his Oxford Union address prior to this. He talks about African history, and like, I mean, I studied history, and for school and that, and like, what you're told and what's there is completely different. Like, if you listen to his Oxford Union address, he'll tell you about how your perspective and how what you learn about, if like you could go up to a random person and ask them about the history of Africa, and they will have, I had very little perspective on what happened in Africa prior to what you're told about, like, and he will expand on absolutely everything, how kingdoms were born in Africa, stuff around Egypt, North Africa, the presence of potentially Africans in the Americas before anybody or anything like Christopher Columbus was there, and how I knew about civilization being born out of Africa, but I mean, to this extent, I did not. And he's so well read, and like he only speaks with stuff that he knows. He's very comfortable in saying that I don't know about a topic, which I find, because a lot of people nowadays
try
and paste over it, and he's very comfortable about saying that I don't know about something. But what he does know about, he knows about. And if you read a book like this, as I said, Natives, Race and Class, and the Ruins of Empire, it'll just change your perspective on things. And like I said, with everything that's going on, there's a lot of stuff. There's the Black Lives Matter stuff in the United States. There's protests in Britain and all. He's been talking on it recently in his Instagram lives and stuff. And like I said, I don't agree with absolutely everything that he says. Akala's quite left-wing. And I would, there's not everything that I agree with, but
you're a wee bit more middle of the road.
A little bit more, lad, a little bit more. But I mean, not to get too political, but like, it's just good to have somebody's perspective, and the way it's referenced, and the amount of, detail that's in it, and historical, pieces, and like I said, I showed you the references there, lad. They're quite.
Oh yeah,
they're quite a lot there at the end of the book. He's got everything backed up with facts, and like, I mean, it's not that I disagree with anything really that's written in this. It's just, he has opinions on other things and stuff that I maybe don't always agree with, but I always think it's decent to tune into somebody that's like, he's not too different. I agree with a lot of his stuff, but it's always different. It's always good to learn, and especially somebody that's as intelligent as he is. I mean, like, he was in the top percentile of mathematics and stuff, and he was born into a family that had all the sort of, what would you call it, stereotypical single parent family in a working class estate. But he filters all this like a biography, and then explains it out and expands on history and stuff, and you just learn. And I think it's always good to learn stuff.
Well, very much so. So you would recommend the book then to another reader?
Absolutely, lad. I think it's really good just to learn things like that, and I really enjoy Akala. I would highly recommend, if anybody doesn't want to pick up the book, to listen in to maybe some of his stuff. That's on YouTube online. There's plenty of it there. He was on with Frankie Boyle. Him and Frankie get on quite well.
Oh, do
him and Frankie get on quite well. Yeah, there's plenty of stuff there if you just want to just tune in, and maybe he isn't your cup of tea or whatever. But I always give somebody a chance. Like, I mean, I think he's writing children. I think he's maybe got something to do with children's books or something now recently coming out. I think this might be his first book. I think. I'm not entirely sure, but it was out last year, and it's got a ton of recommendations on the front and the back, quotes from papers and stuff. He's won a pile of awards for it. It's a great read, like.
Sounds like it, lad. Sounds like a good book there. I mean, I'm a wee bit different, I suppose. I didn't do history at school. In hindsight, I probably wish I had done a bit more about history, because I feel like now there's some things I would like to catch up on and maybe, see from a different perspective, and, as you say, reading from somebody's perspective about things and their livelihood and tying it back to history is very interesting. But sounds like an interesting concept, and he seems like quite well screwed in. Like,
oh, he's well screwed in, lad. He's one of the most intelligent people I've ever heard. He would do all right running for a political office or something, but I think that man knows that there's too much hassle in that. He's maybe just better on the ground doing his work, and he does a lot of good work for people. And really well read. Like, as I said, I think it's his Hip Hop Shakespeare Company or something as well. Like, he's so well read, like read Shakespeare and stuff, and it all filters into his hip hop. He's got, if anybody likes rap music or into a bit of hip hop, he's got 4 or 5 Fire in the Booth episodes with Charlie Sloth. And if you listen to any of them, he gets a message across. It's in the grime. Some of the earlier ones are in like a grime style. Some of the later ones are in a bit more of a nice flow. But he gets a political message across, like in the midst of all that. Maybe not always political, but cultural, class stuff, as well. And it's all filtered into his rap music as well, which is really good. And you like Miss Dynamite, lad, and that's his older sister.
I like Miss Dynamite. She's that's going back a few years now, but I liked her music. But no, that's interesting that they're a brother and sister, and that's a good book, lad.
He's a screwed in dude.
I remember you just saying before Big Dev left, he would like that sort of thing. So
I give it over to him. He'll get a wee read out of it, I think.
So if anybody's listening, definitely
check
that a go.
Akala, Race and Class and the Ruins of Empire, if you're anyway inclined to listen to that, and even if you're not, but you're maybe tuned into that sort of stuff. It's always good to get a different perspective.
Absolutely.
So, Vesty,
Yes.
what have you got for us?
So I've been reading / listening to a few things this last while. Listened to this book last week. So this book is called "You're Making Me Hate You" by Corey Taylor. If anyone doesn't know who Corey Taylor is, he's the lead.
Switching the vibes here.
It's a bit of a switch here.
Yeah.
Corey Taylor is the lead singer of Slipknot and Stone Sour. I'm a big fan of Corey. I've actually read one of his other books, which is called The Seven Deadly Sins. That was his first book.
Yeah.
This was actually his third book. He had one in between the first and second, or the first and third, obviously. But I got this one. I thought this was the second one. It doesn't go in order, but it's just like, it's not as if you must read the first, the second. It's he does like different takes on different things. So this one's called "You're Making Me Hate You," and basically it's a 10-chapter book. It's about 380 pages if you're reading it. About like 40 minutes a chapter if you're listening to it. It's basically what it says in the tin. It's basically a chapter about a certain topic, roughly, about why he hates everything. He basically hates everybody and anything that moves and walks and breathes. He's just an
angry man.
He's just a very angry man. And it's sort of as what you would expect from, the band he's in, Slipknot. I mean, he's had a real crazy upbringing. He's been exposed to like sexual, exposure and like, drink and drugs from a young age, like maybe 10, 12-year-old. Like, he's had a crazy upbringing. Like, he's lived with his gran in like a trailer park and stuff, and moved around from like different states and all that in the US. So he's had a real crazy upbringing.
A lot of them big superstar bands, especially in that genre of metal and rock and roll and stuff, they have interesting upbringings and stories.
They certainly do. They have very interesting backstories.
Like, I'm no Slipknot fan, like, but do you know what the best of it is too, lad? Like, I think Tom has maybe showed me like Corey Taylor singing.
Oh,
and like Corey Taylor can sing his ass off. I'm just not into the screaming thing. That's where you lose me, like. But I know. Sorry, go ahead.
You're exactly right. Like, if you're listening to a lot of his stuff from Slipknot, I mean, I first heard Slipknot when I was real young, and I thought, oh god, that's horrible. Like, and then obviously after a while, I went down that road, and I'm a big Slipknot fan.
We've got a wee bit of a music crossover here, lad. Like, I've got a hip hop artist.
We're sort of
tuned in here.
We're getting musical on it. Right. If Tom was here, Tom would appreciate this Corey pitch, because Tom's a big Corey fan as well. But no, he can, like, the Slipknot. The way I look at it is, Slipknot is like his therapy. He's like.
His music is aggressive.
His music is aggressive. He brings a lot of dark lyrics. He's kind of like your guy that you were chatting about there. Like, he's very, very well screwed, and he's very smart. Even despite his rough upbringing and, like, he's bounced around, he's smart. Some of the words he uses in his books and even in his lyrics is very, very tuned in. Very tuned in. Like, he knows his stuff. Like, and he's a smart guy. But yeah, as I said, Slipknot's like his therapy for, like, he's getting his aggression out, and he's a very angry man. And then if you see him playing solo shows or playing with Stone Sour, his voice he can switch from aggressive and screaming to like this soft angel, if you like. He can really switch.
I like his voice, like.
It's really, really good. You should see the size of his neck, lad. His neck's huge.
That's one thing, like, with musicians and stuff, especially with like heavy metal, or maybe that's not the right genre to put them in, but how does their voice not completely break or wreck? Because, like, you see older artists and stuff. Maybe he's not that old. I don't really know, but I mean, like, even artists like, for example, I quite like Bon Jovi, but even his voice, and he wouldn't have been a big man for like drinking a lot, and he would have a bit, but he was a wee bit more sensible than some of the other rock stars, like say Vince or whatever, from Motley and that, and his voice struggles nowadays. Like, I just don't know how a man like Corey Taylor's voice holds up.
It's crazy.
Even like Liam
as well. Once you like, Corey's mid-40s now, so yeah, you're right in what you say.
He's a bit younger then.
He's a wee bit younger, but there was a phase there where, like, maybe 10 years ago, after like the first early days, like, he had that real wrong, strong voice and like growl and scream whatever, and the voice could carry. Some live performances there 10 years ago, and even a couple of studio performances, the voice was starting to strain, but he was drinking heavy and smoking heavy as well, so that had an effect. But see, since he's sort of cleaned up there from smoking or whatever in the last half a dozen years, the last two albums that not put out, like, he has that voice, it's nearly as good as it was back when he was younger, like. But no, I'm a big fan of Corey, and I suppose I'll get into a bit about this book. I mean, chapter 1, he just sort of goes on a rant about how he was at this, he's at this party, and this guy, he's dressed up in like, and he's Stradlin from Guns. He looks like him. He's dressed up with like, the leather pants and like, the bandana around the head and all, and he's basically going home from this party, and this girl, she's like, can you take my friend home? He's a little bit drunk, or he's definitely been on some sort of drugs or whatever. So on the way home, like, this guy, he's basically in the back of the taxi with the other girl. Corey's in the front. Basically, this guy's going to be sick, and Corey, he's like farting in the car as well. So like whatever drugs he's taking, like, are definitely having an impact on his digestive system. So they have to stop the taxi, and like Corey gets out and helps him like down the back of some alleyway or whatever, and like he says he started puking and all, and like Corey says all he could do was nothing but laugh because he found it hilarious that this guy was in this state of inebriation. Yeah. He says the funniest thing about this was, he says that this guy was so out of his mind. He says, you've never seen anyone who's been that drunk having to struggle to take off leather pants, he says. And like he says, if anyone has ever wore them will know what he means, because he says this guy is drunk and that's being bad enough, but to take off leather pants, he says the guy couldn't get them off in time and he basically shot himself. And he says, fuck this. He says, fuck this, I'm going home. So this is kind of the stories that he gets himself into. That's how he starts the book. He says, I'll always find myself in these situations where
wild things happen.
He's also,
so it's a bit of a biography kind of thing.
It's kind of like that. I mean, it kind of talks about, he brings in wee stories from himself, which is interesting, like things that happen at home and things that have gone on, but obviously the main concept of each chapter is about for example, money. He'll rant about how people go about money and how he'll go about being bad with money. He also talks about how he hates other people's kids, and like he's got like 3 kids himself, and like his son's actually like 18 or maybe 19 now, and he's actually quite a good singer himself. Basically, there's this when his son was a bit younger, he had like his friend over, and Corey doesn't like his friend's son, one of them anyway. No. He calls him Milt. He says basically one day the kid came over for like the son's party, and the kid comes over and says, you're taking me home and you have to take me home by 8:30 and all this here. Right. And Corey's like, say, well, fuck you. Who says you could do that? He takes him home, and like the kid doesn't tell him, like he says, you need to tell me when you have to take a turn for your home. The kid doesn't tell him, and like sends him on a wild goose chase. So he hits this kid Milt.
Not a very happy man.
No, not a very happy man, but some of these chapters as well, like he goes on rants about airports. I mean, like if you're listening to like a lot of comedians will like talk about how they hit airports and
just
all
sounds
that.
Like Bill Burr.
Like Bill Burr and him we get on well. He says like and he makes good points too, because like I know whenever like if you're going through like airport security, it's a bloody nightmare. Like it's hateful. I actually find traveling one of the most stressful things about going anywhere. Like you see going through the airports and all, and
train is the best form of travel. Without doubt.
Train's pretty darn good. Found this point he made quite funny. He says, you've got like airports and all, and especially some of the big airports. He says you have like, your alcohol stalls and like shops and like like the souvenir T-shirt shops and all that sort of thing. He says, but he says, when the fuck do you need a suit and tie shop? Like, no, he says, like, what is a suit and tie shop doing belonging in an airport? I'm flying today. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop in at Heathrow and get myself a nice suit and tie.
It's entirely just ranting and raving about everything.
And it is the best form.
What's the title again?
You're making me hate you. I think you'll like it, lad, because like if you're having a shit day.
Is very. Did you ever listen to George Carlin, lad?
Yes.
This is George Carlin.
Oh, it's all quite similar. He says obviously like he hates flying, but he doesn't hate flying, but he hates the whole baggage with it. But he says, in all honesty, the only time he ever feels like he gets peace is when he's sitting 30,000 feet in the air, because there's nobody to bug him. So there's rants like that there, which I pretty much enjoy. Like it kind of brings a lot to point, which you would sort of think, oh, I can relate to that. I've seen that before, and I know what you mean. That is a bit of a shit thing there. So I quite enjoy that. But the way with him narrating it makes it so much.
Oh, he narrates it too.
He narrates it, and the amount of
this is a therapy session,
lad. There's a point in it where he's talking about it's just said there that this guy that shits himself, his friend, the woman that was in the car with them. she was saying like, Corey, you're so inconsiderate. You shouldn't be doing this. You should be helping someone out in this sort of state. But the way he's like, talking at her, it sounds like a female Daffy Duck. The way he's talking, just him narrating it brings it more to life. He's also going on about how he hates trash TV and he hates the Kardashians. And like, he says like, how the fuck, do young people get through these days? He says, they get up, they go to bed at night at like 5 a.m, and they lie and sleep all day to like 6 p.m. and they get up to fucking set their day around, or their night around trash TV. And he says it's fucking stupid.
This is very George Carlin. George Carlin's a big slip.
Probably bullshit. Do you know what you should watch just on that note? It's like you should have. George Carlin used to narrate the US version of Thomas the Tank Engine, But you know what you would enjoy, right? Is like, obviously he's narrating Thomas the Tank Engine, but like, it's like, whenever it's like, it's like he's narrating Thomas, and then it brings in his comedy stand-up as well. So like, it'll be a clip of Thomas the Tank Engine, be like, hey Thomas, whistle Percy, and he's like, fuck you, Thomas.
What is it? People that there's just like a complete segment in this comedy or something. It's like people that need killed. Just rants and raves about.
George Carlin's very good.
Very good.
But yeah, you can see the similarities, I guess, between him and Corey there.
A comedy biography type thing is what we're getting at here.
Absolutely. Corey's very clever, and he's very funny too. The way if you read and listen to some of his stuff, he's very well. He's good value.
Mm-hmm.
He also rants in this book about money and like how people are stupid with their money, and also how he's been stupid with his money as well. He says like the first time they went out in '99 on tour after the Slipknot debut album, they were all 9 of them in the band. Obviously, they're not going to be making an awful amount of money. Like, I mean, they're millionaires now, like, because they're huge. But after like a tour, he came back. He had his first big paycheck, and he wanted to buy a truck. He sold his car before he left, and he wanted to buy like a pickup truck or something. So he went into like this sales second car sales place, and then seen this truck that he liked and bought it. Didn't ask how much it was. Paid probably 2.5 times the price it should have been, like, and it was pretty banged up as well. It wasn't like a good one. It was pretty damn banged up, but he paid too much for it. He basically went on to say that it broke down 3 hours later. He left it back to the place where he bought it. Yeah. Fucked the guy off. told him he sold him a piece of shit. That didn't work. And he also rants as well about people driving when he's on this chapter. Like, he says like people, you're sitting driving and somebody's like merging into the left hand side or merging into the left hand lane, but like, they don't fucking indicate. And he says as well, like, when you're in the fast lane, he says like, there's some dick behind him that's flashing to like, for him to pull into the slow lane. But he says, how the fuck can I pull into the slow lane whenever I can't get any further on with the car in front in the fast lane? He's absolutely raging through the whole way. And he's like, he's also like speaks in third person. So he says like, he'll rant about this and he goes, God, I'm having a bad day today.
I'd leave myself. Just hasn't went right. Told him to chew up and that broke me.
That broke you, lad. It's been 1 hour, Mike,
It's been a while.
No, this book is real good. I mean, there's no real sort of point to it, but there is a point to it, as in how he rants about everyday things and how he brings. A lot of things he talks about, it hits home with me. I can relate to things like saying, airport and stuff like that there, and how people do stupid shit, like, and you can relate to that sort of thing.
Just sounds like he's venting.
He's always venting.
Right.
He says, I think he basically says he's more or less like a ticking time bomb. He says he just says he can't wait till we get on to the next fucking planet because this one's already fucking fucked. I think you really enjoy him, lad. I think you should listen to him tonight.
That's what I was going to ask you, lad. So, like, obviously, it's it's Corey Taylor, it's Slipknot, and Stone Sour. Did you say?
Stone Sour.
So, would it be readable for somebody that's not a fan?
It would be. I mean, it doesn't delve into like it's not him like talking about this and then saying, "Oh, I'm back in Slipknot or this," or you don't have to worry about that sort of connection. Nah. But it's very interesting. He's very smart. He says like, if he susses somebody out, he'll like if he says like there's somebody he's speaking to and like this guy's trying to like sound like a big shot or trying like to bullshit his way through a conversation or something. He says like he'll know what he'll do. He says, well, I'll basically bring a few big words to the table, and he says I'll make sure this guy fucks off because I'll bring a couple of words, big words forward that he hasn't a clue about and fucking show him up. Yeah. You know, he's
sounds well educated too. Like.
He does. He's smart, like, and he knows he's smart. And if you listen to any of his lyrics, like, you can tell that as well, and you can tell it by the way he writes, and you can tell it by the way he talks. So he knows his stuff. I'm a big fan. Always been a big fan. He's an absolute lunatic, which also helps as well. He's very interesting. Like, he's had a crazy backstory. If you listen to him or read one of his earlier books, The Seven Deadly Sins, it talks a wee bit more about his sort of crazy days, and a lot of interviews as well. He talks about, you know, things. I think he was actually maybe sexually abused. I think there was like an interview that broke out a few years ago that he talked about where, you know, there was things that happened when he was young that only came to fruition there not so long ago. So he's had a dark past and a dark upbringing. He hasn't had it easy, and he's came a long way, and I'm a big fan of him for obvious reasons. But
well, if he's out there writing books, like, I mean, he's not just he's a bit like a Calla too. Like, he's not just a musician. He's well.
Oh, aye.
He's well spread out, like.
Very much so. I mean, this is the second book I read by him, or listened to, if you like. The other one I read was about 6-7 years ago. I really enjoyed this book. It was kind of one of them books that you should listen to if you're in a bad mood and you feel like you need to rant. And with Corey narrating it, it just adds to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very, very good insight into sort of like good points about everyday life, and like you can relate to a lot of things in it. He's got a couple other books as well. He's got the other one, which is the second book, is a fun. I think it's called it's a funny thing happened on the way to heaven. And then the other one is it America 51, which was out a couple of years ago. It's basically venting about the politics in America.
Yeah.
Haven't read it or listened to it yet, but I listened to a wee segment of it, and he's basically ranting about how he can't believe Trump's president.
I think I don't think Calla has. I'm nearly sure that's Calla's first book, but he's put me on to a couple of different books. You know, we actually did like a reading series and different sort of historical books that you could read. He actually turned me on. I've got the book upstairs, but I've yet to get it. I suppose like a sort of, you know, the way you're saying, maybe talk about other books that he had, but he put me on to a book. It's about Bob Marley. It's called The Brief History of Seven Killings.
Right.
And apparently it's centered around the assassination attempt of Bob Marley, but it's sort of written from perspectives of people in his life. Not they don't even refer to Bob Marley in it as Bob Marley. They refer to him as the singer, but it's other people around his life, and it sort of narrates the story. It's by Marlon James. Apparently it's a very good book, won a load of praise. Marlon James has actually written a fantasy series now, and what is it called? Black Leopard, Red Wolf, I think. And if you haven't got on to it, but apparently it's really good too. So,
alright.
Calla's really good as well. But no other books.
Right, no other books.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But he has put me on to a couple of other books, and I will get to that Bob Marley book at some stage after maybe.
That would be pretty good.
Aye.
But yeah, I would recommend this book for any Slipknot fan or any metal fan, or even anybody that, even somebody like yourself that doesn't like sort of that sort of music, but like you could definitely get a good bit of value out of listening or reading this book, because it just vents basically about people and their stupid habits and about everyday life, and about sort of brings a lot of light onto
bit of humour in it.
A bit of humour, like it's a good bit of humour.
A bit light.
I would definitely recommend this book, so if anyone reading it, give it a go. And I guess sort of that concludes our wee short segment here this afternoon or evening, morning, wherever you are. But I think basically where we're going with this is just basically, you know, a couple of us around here tonight, and then maybe the next time we'll have Tom in. I don't know if Dev's going to go down that road of, you know, committing to listening or reading books, but we've brought two books here tonight. They're from like a political aspect, musical aspect, and you know, something sort of similar. I think maybe the next time
we've linked up pretty well.
We've linked up pretty well. Lad. I think the next time I'm going to bring forward, possibly in the next one, we're going to do either maybe a book perhaps about like just, you know, a wee bit of crime thriller or something, or maybe I've listened to one of them recently, and maybe a bit of I've listened to some football ones as well.
Main for the next one.
I've got a football one as well, and that I've read, and I've obviously read another couple of books as well. So we've got a few on the table of all different varieties. So you know, it's pretty good. We're just going to give this a wee go, see how it goes. But if anybody that likes to read or listen to books, you know, it'll be quite tune in. But aye, Dave, I'll let you round us out.
Aye, fair enough, lad. No, as Vesty saying there, we've got keep an eye out on a Wednesday evening. Basically, Dev's doing wee quizzes. This Wednesday will probably be the night for other sort of smaller topics, other shorter form podcasts, wee things that we're slightly interested in. I'll have maybe UFC and boxing and stuff like that there. It'll just be another night for something a bit different, and Vesti's put this one forward, and I like it. We're all doing a wee bit of reading. Maybe Dev will kick back in the gear, like.
He might succumb to the pressure.
Might do, aye. We're all reading wee bits and pieces, obviously. We'll have Tom in at some stage to get another bit, but good wee segment, lad. Just a wee recap on what you're reading or what you've read, and maybe people will like it. Like so, we're gonna throw these sort of things out on a Wednesday. We're up on Spotify now. I think this one's gonna be out pretty sharpish, probably next week.
Could be, yeah.
But so this one will be out pretty sharp. Tune in. We'll not do it all the time, but like we'll tune back in and do another because like obviously it takes a while to read a book, so we'll We'll do it every now and then because obviously I'll probably dive in with a bit of the UFC and boxing. Kirby will have his quizzes, so it might be like a monthly thing or every few weeks or whatever it is. So we'll tune in with that.
If there's a bit of popularity with it, or if we get a bit of feedback, if you like what we're doing, we could always up the ante and do 2 or 3 a month, whatever, that sort of thing. Because I know you've read quite a few books recently, and I've been at a few recently as well, so we have a few in the bank to work on.
Surely, yeah.
So, and I think we've also mentioned as well that between the 3 or 4 of us here, on the podcast, that we actually might do a joint book.
I do like a read along.
Read along type thing. So, that'll be quite good.
Yeah, we could maybe like empty that out into maybe like a for our nerd culture stuff. Maybe empty it out into like a for one of the fuller podcasts because I suppose this one's around about 40 minutes, but we could maybe empty it out into like a bigger one. So if we did like a read along thing where we're tackling a series or tackling a one book and then just do a longer podcast on it.
No, aye.
But thanks everybody for listening. We'll get the hell out of here. It's a shocking evening and we need to get home. It was warm this morning, like out and getting the suntan, and now it's pissing down.
Not crazy summer weather, man.
Right, we'll get the hell out of here. Thanks for listening, people. Say goodbye, Vesti.
Goodbye, Vesti. Good luck.